My name is Rob Wile. I cover business, technology, and economics at the Miami Herald. We have a really great panel coming up here with 4 fantastic members of, people that are in some way incredibly knowledgeable about what it means to be in finance in 2018. So I'd just like to let them each introduce themselves and have them talk a little bit about their work and their companies. So, Guy, why don't you start?
Hello, everyone. My name is Guy Hirsch. I'm the USA Managing Director for eToro. eToro is a global investment platform. We have a platform for self-directed investors who are interested in access to the global markets. We have 6 different asset classes on our platform, one of which is cryptocurrencies. When you sign up, you get to invest in all these and in crypto. By default, when you start trading, your portfolio and track record are shared with the rest of the community so people can see how well you're doing. And we have other social features on the platform that I won't mention, and that's about it.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gabriela Estrada. I'm co-founder at Vexi. Vexi is the first credit card for young and underbanked people in Mexico. We just launched this year in April, and today we have 3,100 credit cards approved in the market. My background is on the finance industry. I had 15 years experience in banking, both in Citi and American Express.
Thank you. Professor.
Hello. My name is William Velez. I'm the Chief Information Officer for Intermex Wire Transfer. We're a money remittances company based in Miami. We're the #1 money remittance company in the world to Guatemala and in the top 5 to Mexico. Very happy to be here.
Professor.
Hello. My name is Lorenzo Naranjo. I'm Professor of Finance at Miami Business School. I'm also Faculty Director of our Masters in Finance. I'm relatively new to Miami. I've been here for only 4 years, but super excited to be here. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. So just out of curiosity here, how many of you have made a loan in the past 12 months in the audience? Okay, a few. And how many of you have taken out a loan in some way in the past 12 months here? Okay. So let me start off the panel by asking, we'll go back to the past 5 years, what has changed most about how customers obtain financing in the marketplace?
I believe technology has changed everything in the last 5 years. Online lending has revolutionized the industry. It's now the rule of how customers are looking to finance themselves. They don't look anymore to go into a banking branch and try to get the loan over there. It's all about information, about opportunity, and that's online.
William.
I think the API explosion, application programming interface, so without going too technical, the ability to interact with the companies has really exploded in the past 5 years. That has enabled all this disruption. I completely agree. There's a lot of more information for comparison purposes. So from a consumer perspective, it's easier to find better deals than it was before.
Professor?
I think a big change has been this emergence of peer-to-peer lending. A latest report by TransUnion reports that the personal loan business is around $100 billion, and today 30% of that is actually done through some kind of peer-to-peer platform. We have a student finishing his PhD in our finance department, and one of the papers in his thesis analyzes the social effects, actually, of the emergence of this peer-to-peer lending, and credit is actually quite important. I mean, there are papers out there that show that basically when there is credit scarcity, you have bad things happening, like, for example, more crime. And then because now we have these platforms in place, whenever there is a credit disruption, which could be due to some kind of catastrophic event, weather or something like that, people use these platforms then to kind of like buffer a little bit the effects of this credit scarcity. And it actually shows in data that, crime rates get reduced and, entrepreneurs get access to financing and so forth. So this has been, I think, super, super important.
And Guy, eToro is a result of changes that have taken place in the marketplace just in the past few years. So talk a little bit about the opportunity that you guys saw.
So specifically about debt markets, I think it will all converge with what we're seeing with cryptocurrency and crypto assets changing everything. So we did a very recent proprietary research and saw that there is a vast majority of Americans would like to take loans in crypto, or crypto-denominated type loans. You already see some platforms out there that are doing, for example, real estate listing, and you can accept the money for the property in Bitcoin or in Ethereum and whatnot. So, one platform like that is Propi, and it's just natural that very soon we will see the financing being denominated in crypto and crypto assets, and people taking loans based on this asset class. And thanks to smart contracts and things of that nature, I think the sophistication of the loan will be much more interesting than what we have right now.
So this panel is interesting because they specialize actually in I wouldn't call them niche markets, but not major markets. So, we all know how the interest rate environment is changing, but within, let's say, the underbanked community or in developing nations, specifically, how have credit conditions changed in those markets in the past few years?
I believe that in emerging markets such as Mexico, information and data available is changing the way we lenders build our credit scoring. So that is changing a lot because it's giving access to a lot of people that previously wouldn't have been able to finance themselves. So I believe the access to information, the new technologies, the machine learning, and all the tools that are now available for startups, even for traditional banks, is changing and is making the loans and the finance much more accessible to a lot of people that previously was not able to find themselves.
And Gabriela, can you give an example maybe of someone who previously wouldn't have been able to have gained access to credit that is now able to in the markets that you serve?
No, really. There are lots of startups across whole Latin America that are providing access to SMEs, especially. That market is getting a lot of attention from many VCs, and in Mexico there are many examples, in Chile, in Peru, of startups that are bringing finance or loans accessible to SMEs that previously were not able to finance themselves. So that is deepening the market in Latin America. In our case, Vexi, we are providing access to lots of people that previously wouldn't have access to their first credit card. So they wouldn't have been able to build their credit history and later on access to different and more formal forms of financing. So I believe information and technology are giving us the tools to bring the financing or the loans accessible to a lot of people.
And William, for Intermex, let's say in a market like Guatemala, what is the emerging marketplace of potential debtors or folks taking out loans? What does that look like now, and how are you guys facilitating that?
Our customer base is in the U.S. So from a credit perspective, what we've seen with the Guatemala community in the U.S., many of them are unbanked. Therefore, I think in the last 5 years, the greatest thing is that we've seen is the general purpose reloadable cards. It's very easy access to credit for people who don't have the access to a normal bank. Even with their matricula consular or non-US IDs, you can get one of these cards and become part of the online community. I think in my view, that's the greatest change I've seen in the past 5 years that has become very widespread. I can't really tell in Guatemala, but at least in the US, that's the case.
Another, in the post Great Recession, financial crisis era, we have seen regulations come in a very intensive way. So Professor, can you talk about how the regulatory environment has changed a decade into, or a decade beyond the financial crisis, and how that is now affecting the debt markets?
Well, we had a big change after the crisis with the passing of the Dodd-Frank Regulation Act, and that basically was the biggest change since the Great Depression, actually, in our financial services. On the cost side, I think that the biggest cost for financial institutions is basically compliance. I mean, this has increased the compliance of many businesses, and that's a real cost for the economy. On the other hand, I do think that this has helped making the financial system more robust. It has at least keep in our memory the fact that we had such a big crisis 10 years ago. I think that's an important thing. Consumers have benefited by getting extra protection from the regulator. And it has basically given the regulator a little bit more opportunities to regulate both at the consumer level, but also at the big institutional level. Where it is electronic trading, where it is investment banking, and whether it is, all these new platforms that are emerging.
And for the rest of you three, can you talk about, how compliance costs figure into your cost structure?
Sure. So we are, for example, we are transitioning from being a CFD-based business into 100% blockchain-based business. So that is a major shift. We have more than 10 million customers, and last year we did more than $500 billion in trading volume on our platform. So we're transitioning this entire activity into blockchain-based type trading or based trading. And so the compliance is a major factor in it, where we need to do a lot of very close work with regulators, not just here, but globally, because we're regulated outside of the US by the FCA in the UK and CISEC in Cyprus. And we need to work with them in figuring out what's the best compliance infrastructure for this new economy. And so there's a lot of cost, there's a lot of startup cost in doing that and figuring out with them hand in hand what is the best way to be compliant to this new world economy. But we feel that the investment is well worth it. So it's a heavy lift. We're doing it. The industry and other competitors are doing it as well. And in some cases, we join forces in order to have a unified point of view for the regulator in terms of how to do things. But it is coming, and we're happy to make that investment in order to have a much more a much brighter future, not for just ourselves, but for our consumers who will benefit from it.
Right. Gabriela?
For us, in the case of Vexi, compliance has been a heavy burden, but not as much, I believe, as it has been for the banks across the world. I used to work in a really big bank, one of the big ones falling during the crisis, and the change that compliance brought to it, it's tremendous. I believe for years and years, the only people that the bank was hiring was in the compliance and legal departments. I believe now we have, as the professor was saying, a much more robust and safe environment in the banking industry. But I believe the threats for the global financial system will not come from the banks right now. Will come from all the other players that has tripled since the last crisis. So I believe there are some other threats now to the financial stability.
And William, you have your own unique set of.
So in a heavily regulated industry, money service business, the main change I've seen in the past 2 to 3 years is that the regulators in the US have emphasized cybersecurity a lot. So in particular, starting with New York with Regulation 500, they've aligned with the SEC rules and they've came down with a lot of restrictions on how the business needs to implement cybersecurity. Happily, we had some of those already, but some of our competitors maybe didn't. So that introduces a cost factor that wasn't predicted.
So that was the part of the panel. Guy, you jumped the gun a little bit, but you mentioned the B word, blockchain. So there was, I think there was a blockchain-specific panel already. So hopefully we don't go over some of the same territory, but and obviously there was just a major blockchain conference here as well a couple of weeks ago. But so for a pure blockchain disbeliever who says I've heard enough about blockchain, just no more, please. What would you tell them to be like? No, it's actually it's a safe space. You can come in here and not get spun around.
So my advice to these believers, including starting from Rubini all the way to the average Joe out there, is that you should read about this because it will affect your life, 100%. You may or may not know it, but in 5-10 years, a lot of the things that you will do at least will be propelled or backed by or enabled through blockchain-based technology. It will happen, period. Now, exactly how, at what scale, where, I don't know. I don't think anybody does, but there's no such thing as I think as a future without blockchain being embedded in our daily lives. And so if you don't believe in this, I would highly recommend open a book or read a white paper or start investigating because it will affect your life, probably in a profound way, especially if you live in an emerging economy or in an economy where it is highly corrupt and things of that nature. This might help you basically, I won't say save your life, but it will probably help you exit your current stressors. If you will move into a blockchain-based economy, you will be able to protect your asset, you will be able to protect your wealth, you will be able to accept revenue and customers from around the world. You will be able to do what we call digital immigration. You will be able to exit your corrupt local economy into a new economy that's global in nature and where it, in most cases, is out of reach for the corrupt government that is currently governing, whatever economy you're living in. So that will be my recommendation.
Does anyone else have anything to add I have to say that blockchain has changed my life. I mean, I used to teach finance, and the most difficult topic was perhaps to explain a crisis, and suddenly all my students are trading cryptos, and they're getting into blockchain, and I have to start making sense of it, right? Because I teach a course on trading and a course on investments. So yes, I mean, this is something I absolutely believe that we have to think carefully about it. We need to understand what this commodity is and how to, understand its evolution over time, how to do risk management with it, how to, put in a portfolio, right? I mean, are we going to have ETFs, ETNs? We have futures contracts right now. So yeah, I mean, I think that I agree with you, Guy. I mean, it's something that is coming.
William, do you have any thoughts as someone who has to deal with large financial institutions in developing nations?
Our banks specifically say we cannot use blockchain because of KYC, know your customer. I personally have a more, I call it mundane view of the future. I think it's going to be like electricity. I agree. It's going to be embedded in many things that we might not know it. The question is, that's the long term, but the medium term is going to be extremely disruptive. The question is for who and how. Some industry is going to be a situation where it benefits all the players. So everyone will have a vested interest in investing in blockchain together. In other industries, it will be kind of the tragedy of the commons, where who does it first and who basically ruins it for the rest of the players. So I think it's very specific by industry, but I think eventually it will be very embedded in everything.
And Gabriela, have any of your clients started talking about blockchain?
I believe, and once a friend of mine told me a real nice tale of how he compares blockchain. And he's like, the time for adoption for internet was close to 15 years. For iOS was close to 8 years. So blockchain, they expect it to be 7 years. So we are getting to that point. And I do believe blockchain is going to change a lot of stuff. It has the power, as he was saying, to stabilize and disrupt many, especially transaction-based businesses, not only in finance. So it could help a lot of other industries. So.
That's an optimistic view of things. Before we get to questions, though, I wanted to ask you guys, what keeps you up at night about the financial system at the moment?
What keeps me up at night is, when will the big shift happen? When will it happen? When will we see the world financial markets change and we're moving into this new economy on scale? And how we, eToro, can get us faster to that kind of future. And there's a lot of natural opposition to what this entails. And so we need to basically figure out how to win over some skeptics, how to win over so the natural opposition, and make sure that everyone benefits from it. So even if you stand to lose from the implementation of blockchain in your business, we want to figure out a way to help you see the future and say, okay, join the movement, and here's how you will benefit from it. So that's what keeps me up at night. I would like to see that future in 5-10 years and not 25 years.
Gabriela?
To me, I believe the things we don't know, or the things we don't understand really, and that are now out there. All these algorithm-based trading, cryptos also, and the increase of debt without any backing on it. I believe those are the three things that really, talking about global economy, keep me awake. China, one of them. But I do believe the future is full with things we don't know or things we don't understand, but it's also full with opportunities for many people or many new technologies to come in and help to stabilize whatever we can.
Right. William?
Fear of missing out. There's just so many things you can be investing, blockchain being one of them, artificial intelligence, and you have finite resources. So trying to think which one of these new technologies or disruptive areas I should invest or focus on so that we don't miss out. That's kind of what keeps me up at night.
For me, it's actually how to incorporate all these things that you have mentioned that are very interesting into the curriculum that we teach to our students. I mean, we held an important role, a big responsibility. We see the students before they actually go to the market. So I'm always trying to think, okay, are we doing the right thing? Are we teaching the right topics? Right now, I see that we're basically being forced to take a much more holistic approach to finance. I mean, to include psychology, to include technology, to include coding, to make our programs more international. I mean, markets are getting more and more open. So those are things that I'm constantly kind of like keeping in my head.
Great. All right, we have time for 1, 2, or maybe 3 questions. Yes.
Thank you. Guy, I know you mentioned a lot about blockchain, how it's going to impact all of our lives pretty greatly. Can you give some examples in the United States how blockchain is going to impact us every day and make our lives better?
Sure. I think just to stay out of payments for a second, real estate transactions. Right now, we have very archaic way of doing that. You need to do, whoever is named on the deed in a county somewhere is the owner of a property. That is ancient. And it requires a lot of work to then move one property from one person to another. If you do it on a blockchain-based type of transaction, and everything is on the ledger that cannot be changed and cannot be falsified and is censorship resistant, then you can do it in a much more efficient way. It will be faster, it will be cheaper, people can, and regulators can quickly audit the trail of who owns what. So that will change basically how we do real estate transactions. I believe you're in staffing, right? So think about moving into a way where if you do recruiting, then you have a smart contract that guarantees that if a certain candidate is being hired, then you get your pay automatically. Everything's been kind of, triggered automatically, and you don't need a legal contract per se, but you're guaranteed to get your pay if a candidate is being hired, and everything was on a blockchain. You can give people incentive through tokenization to share their personal information, to do all sorts of other things, but it will really be vast, like a supply chain, right? So to track things across continents on the blockchain in a way that guarantees that who's the rightful owner of a particular package, things of that nature. So, and we're not even talking about payments and investing, that's kind of obvious. But I think really the sky is the limit. Anything you can think of in terms of financial transaction can and should be impacted by blockchain. And you'll see it, and there's amazing experiments going on right now in the world, and it will just grow.
Right. All right. I think we are out of time. So thanks to our panelists. It was a great discussion, and thank you guys for being here.